right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Okay, we're going to do roll call. And as a reminder, when I do roll call, you'll say your name and where you are physically right now. Okay, so Melanie Macy.
I am here in my dining room in Royal Oak.
Excellent. Carla Getz.
Present in Royal Oak.
Thanks. Catherine Rebont Payne.
Also present in Royal Oak.
Mark Walton.
Present in Royal Oak.
Aaron Van Beek.
Present in Royal Oak.
Stacy Woodward is present in Royal Oak. Eric McLeod.
Present in Royal Oak.
Okay. Sharon Stanton.
Present in Royal Oak.
Excellent. And then Maya, I've not heard from. Maybe she'll be joining us soon.
She's on the way.
She's on the way. Okay. All right. Was there any public comment, Adrian?
There was no public comment today.
Okay, thank you. Our first order of business is swearing in our new trustee, Sharon Stanton. So Sharon makes it so that we have a full board. This is so exciting.
Full circle.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the swearing in, and then we'll do a round of introductions after that so that we can meet each other. And I've put in the chat the text of the oath.
Can you open that up?
Emailed it to whatever's easier.
No,
I'll read the part, you repeat it, and then you're sworn in. And then tomorrow, Dennis will do e-signatures, and Dennis
Perfect.
will it'll all happen and be official.
Should I hold my hand up?
I think you should.
I feel like I should.
I think you should.
Right.
All right, here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I, Sharon Stanton, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I, Sharon Stanton, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
The Constitution of the State of Michigan,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
the Charter and ordinances of the City of Royal Oak,
the Charter and ordinances of the City of Royal Oak,
and the policies approved by the Royal Oak Public Library Board of Trustees.
and the policies approved by the Royal Oak Public Library Board of Trustees.
I will endeavor to secure and maintain an honest and efficient administration of the affairs of the City of Royal Oak,
I will endeavor to secure and maintain an honest and efficient administration of the affairs of the City of Royal Oak,
free from partisan control,
free from partisan control,
and to perform the duties of trustee of the Royal Oak Public Library to the best of my ability.
and to perform the duties of trustee of the Royal Oak Public Library to the best of my ability.
Excellent. I think we should unmute and clap. That's a good
Thank you.
Unmuting and
Thank you
clapping.
so much for the warm welcome. And hi, Erin, I see you there too. Nice to meet you. I know Erin as well, so nice.
Look at that. It's a group of friends. So let's just go around, just introduce yourselves to Sharon and just say, I'll start. I'm Stacy Woodward. We know each other. So Sharon and I went to school together. We met each other when I was in 5th grade. So, I live in Royal Oak. I've got 2 kids in Royal Oak. I grew up going to the library board. I'm an educator, been an educator for 20 years now, and I've been on the library board since 2012.
Wow.
I know. All right, I'm gonna popcorn it over to Erin.
Hi, Sharon. I was telling Stacy, I was typing up, getting ready for the minutes. I'm like, Sharon. I haven't seen you in about a year because our church is closed, but Sharon and I go to the same church. My kids were little last time you saw them, but now I have a 5 and a 3-year-old.
Wow.
Anxious to hear how old your kids are. And we love the library. We go there all the time. And I joined the board a year ago in February of 2020.
Very nice.
It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Hey, Erin, popcorn over to somebody.
I will popcorn down to Carla.
Hi, Sharon. I'm Carla Getz. I have been a resident of Royal Oak for 10 years. I have 3 kids who are in elementary and middle school. And I'm a stay-at-home mom, used to be a teacher, and now I'm a full-time volunteer. So
Very nice.
I look forward to working with you.
Same, thank you.
Get a popcorn to someone.
That's all my name said. I'm Melanie Macy. I've lived here since, I think 17 years, since 2004. I have 3 kids, 2 at the middle school and 1 second grader at Keller. I'm a city commissioner. I'm the city commissioner liaison to the library board, and I've been on this board since before I was a commissioner in 2017. And I will popcorn over to the person who started with me, Mark.
Ah, let's see. Hi, Sharon. Welcome. I'm Mark
Thank you.
Walton. I've lived in Royal Oak, I think 8 years now. I've been on the board for 5. I'm a retired teacher and union business agent. I have 5 children, my wife and I, and we have 7 grandchildren. And that's the long and short of it.
Very nice.
So Mark, now you pick someone.
Oh, Mark, Eric.
There we go. How's it going, Sharon? My name is Eric. I've been a resident of Royal Oak since 2014, actually. I joined the board in December, so I'm relatively new as well. So still learning the ropes. And yeah, it's just welcome. We're excited to work with you.
Thank you so much.
I have popcorn to, who hasn't gone yet? Let's see, Catherine.
So I will take my time to welcome Sharon because I'm friends with Sharon. And so this was a wonderful surprise to see that she was coming to the board. And I think she'll be a really great addition. So I will take my time to welcome her.
Thank you.
I think Maya still needs to.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Maya Lane. Welcome, Sharon. I'm the new. I'm a college student. I'm a recent graduate from Royal Oak High School, and I go to OCC. And I know Commissioner Macy well because I've been on the Parks and Rec committee for the last 5 years as like a student, and I just became the new secretary of that board. And last month was actually when I became a new trustee board of this committee. So welcome to the library board. It is a lot of fun. I'm sure you're going to have some fun as well. And welcome again.
Thank you so much, Maya.
You're welcome.
Adrienne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Sharon. So excited to work with you. My name is Adrienne Bresna. I've been with the library for about 3.5 years. I am the head of access services, but for the past week and 2 days, I've also been the interim director.
Mm-hmm. Busy lady.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks for all your help today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Now it's your turn, Sharon.
I was gonna say, you want me to introduce myself? So thank you so much for the warm welcome. I grew up in moved to Royal Oak from Cleveland when I was 11, and then lived there until I got married and spent about 10 years in Madison Heights. And now I've been back in Royal Oak since 2016. I have 2 kids. Mary is 13 now.
Oh my gosh.
My son Ned is just turned 10. Mary's at the middle school. Ned's in Lamphere District until he moves over to middle school. And I work in marketing and communications. I'm with Walsh College. So I am very excited to be here. So thank you all so much. Can't wait to get to work.
Okay, Stacey, I have to say something now. My husband's name is Ned. You said Ned, right?
There's no Neds.
I know. That's why I'm telling you.
Oh, here is he. What is he? A Ned or is he? My son
Edward.
Is Edward. We call him Nedward. Or we call him Ned.
Yes, he's an Edward. Mine's an Edward who's a Ned.
I love it.
I know.
Very nice. Neds unite.
Having the pleasure of knowing both Neds, they would enjoy each other. Just so you know, they should meet for sure.
I mean, definitely they should.
Well, look at this. We have a full board. We have an interim director. We're cruising, man. I'm excited. Okay. Now, and as we go, you can pipe in with questions about how we're doing things. Luckily, you came on a good night because Carla is going to give a little help on how to read our budget, which we're still, by the way, learning. We always have questions. Wait, what does that line item mean? And what have you. So pipe up with any questions. We're here to help. Okay, so announcements and communications. Does anybody have any to share? Okay, feels like no. Wait time on Zoom is weird, but I think it's a no. All right. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Carla would motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, Melanie seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
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 All opposed? Let the record reflect that this motion passes unanimously. All right, acceptance of the minutes from January 26th.
Carla motions to accept the minutes from January 26th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Melanie.
I'd like to say they are beautiful minutes. Very beautifully done.
These are Erin's first minutes. She's our newly elected secretary and she did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from January 26th as presented, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Let the record reflect that this motion passed unanimously. Also, I wouldn't normally have to say that in person, but online we have to say that, Sharon. Okay. All right. Financial reports with a 101 from Budget Chair Carla Getz. So we have many options for committee assignments. And one of the committees is budget. It already has four folks, so that one's full up because we can't have quorum at a committee meeting. But if you look at our agenda, there's you can see the other committees that you might like to join, and we can talk about that later. Carla is chair of our committee, so would you like to kick us off?
Yes. I also want to point out that so currently we're in the middle of budget season where we're the committee is busy putting together the new budget. But next year we will likely have room on that committee. So if it's something that interests you, we would gladly welcome you for the next year and the next season.
I feel like it's not my skill set, but it's very kind of you to introduce
All right. So Adrian sent me a copy of the financial document horizontal so that I can share it with you guys. Is it sharing all right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the things that I look for when I am looking at these financial documents each month. Okay. So the first thing, looking at the top, I do a little math. Usually it's printed off here, but sometimes I think that's not included. It tells you how far through the fiscal year we have made it. So this is printed off for through the end of February, though it was actually printed on the 18th. So it doesn't have everything from February on it. It has 2 weeks worth of February. So it's something to note that that it's slightly short of the whole month. And over a couple of, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, we started requesting that 2 months worth of the documents get posted in our board packets so that we could see the completed month from January and then the new partial month from February. So in our board packet, you would have seen that there were 2 sets of monthly documents on there because when we had our last month's meeting, it wasn't the complete month for January. So, sometimes I want to look back and see what happened after our meeting in January still. But so this tells you right up here that about 66% of the fiscal year has been completed. So then when I look through, I'm gonna look for, okay, well, which line items are significantly different than 66%? And then I start questioning those lines. Before I go through a few examples of that, I just want to show you over here. These are like the call numbers. For each line on our budget has a different number. And if people are having trouble finding which line you're looking at, we'll say, oh, well, it's 57405. State aid library penal fines. And so that would be how we would talk about it. They all start off 271. But then the numbers after that are different. So that will help you, and they are categorized in numerical order. So that would help you also. This whole first section up here are all revenues. So money that comes into the library. And then when you come down the whole rest of the document, which starts here and goes down for 2 more pages, are our expense categories. So the money that we pay out. This first column right here is our approved budget. We approved it last year in March, and then the city commission accepted it and approved it also. And so all of these numbers that are in this first column will tell you how much we have approved to spend on that category, or we expected to receive if it's a revenue. The second column will tell you how much has actually been spent so far this fiscal year. And then the third column tells you how much was spent just in this month. So it would be in February. Now it says activity for the month of February 28th, but the reality is it was printed on February 18th. So it's just something to be aware of, that it's actually a half of a month and not a whole month. This fourth column says how much is left in the budget, either to be received still, or if it's in the expenditures, it's how much we have left to spend in that line item. And then the last column will tell you what % of the budget has already been used. Now, our revenues largely come in at the beginning of the year. A few things will trickle in as the year goes on, but for the most part, this big chunk, the bulk of our property taxes comes in the summer, shortly after our fiscal year begins. So we start off in the black, which is always a nice thing. Now, if I scroll down, all right, I told you before that 66% of the fiscal year had passed. So what I would start looking for in the expenses is, okay, well, which things are somewhere in the range of 60%? Those things are probably fine and they don't stand out as being inappropriate. But if I go down a little, so like, let me show you right here, 14.36%. That seems really low. So what line item is that? Oh, that's cleaning and janitorial supplies. Well, the reason that that's so low is because our building's not open to the public right now. So we're not using as many cleaning and janitorial supplies as we budgeted for because we're not open to the public right now. So that kind of makes sense. If you come down here, this one says 97%. Which one is 97%? That's almost all of our budgeted amount. That is programming, supplies, and related expenses. Okay, we budgeted $10,000 and $9,716 have been spent. 1,628 were spent this month. Okay, and there's only $283 left to spend on that line item. You know, that might be a discussion topic that I'd want to bring up and say, hey, is that going to get us through the rest of the year? Do we need to question that line item, and do we need to find more money for it? Or is it all planned out and everything's okay? So those are the types of things that I look for when I am looking through the budget. Any questions?
If there are no questions, we'll do the pop quiz now. So no, okay.
You get better at it over time. But those are like the key points. So you can start to be like, oh, I can kind of see how that fits together. Or as other people are asking questions, you can at least follow along. So. Oh, Erin.
Really just spend the next few months listening to Carla's questions every meeting, and then you'll start to get the hang of it.
Exactly. I just recently joined the budget committee. It's been very helpful. And Carla, I was just wondering if you could point out for the new members, the revenue, and I just want to point out the revenue and all the employee figures come from the city. So there are still a lot of budget numbers that we're not coming up with on our own that we really can't impact or change.
Yeah,
I thought that was very important for me to realize.
This whole chunk here. So the board does have influence over how many hours we're open and how much staffing we have for the building. But once that's determined, you know, what level we will be staffed at, those numbers, which are the bulk of our expenses, it's like 85% of our expenses, they just get sent to us from the finance department, and they tell us, okay, well, if you're going to keep staffing at that same level, these are the numbers that you have to work around, and you should assume that this is how much it's going to be. So yeah, while we're doing our budget, we're really working with like the last 15%, and where are we going to spend that last 15%? So very good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carla, so much for going over that. And I do actually echo Melanie's sentiment of just pay attention to the questions that Carla asks, because she asks really good questions. So given that, Carla, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions about this month's budget? Financial statements?
Don't think I do.
We have to wait till next month, you guys.
I did.
Really good.
There were some things that I noticed, but then I think I answered them for myself. So like there was one that was miscellaneous contracted services that there was a decent amount spent in. And so Adrienne, is that for the codes, the RFID tagging? Or is it something else?
I bet it is. That's kind of
like, want to say what RFID tagging is? Maybe Adrienne would be a good person to explain this.
Yeah, it stands for radio frequency identification. So in some library books, you'll see little tags. Ours are like about that big, and they allow you to check a book out just by placing it on a pad rather than scanning a barcode.
This is brand new technology that we've brought to the Royal Oak Public Library. We've been talking about it for years, but it was such a huge endeavor that we never took it up. Why not do it during a pandemic? So that's what we did. And so we have a company helping us out with it, but they also are working with staff to train them. And it's required like putting these tags in the books and, you know, sort of all that stuff and training staff. And it sounds like it's going well. So that's RFID tagging. There you have it. Okay. Is there anything are there other questions about the financial reports for February from trustees? Okay. All right. Moving on then to the library interim director's report. And what I'll say about that is the director's report isn't just what the director writes, but also all the other department heads. So that whole section is the director's report. And we're lucky. We get a really detailed description of what's going on. It really helps the board stay in touch with what's happening in the library. So I usually ask this is your first board meeting as a interim director, this is normally where I ask, is there anything you'd like to add? Because sometimes what happens is between the time the report gets sent, actually 100% of the time, between the time the board packet gets sent and then the time we have the meeting, something has happened and there's an update. So I'll start with that.
Thank you. I actually do have a few updates. So first of all, this was my first board packet and meeting. So if you have any feedback for how I can do it better for March, please let me know. So the RFID tagging project is done, except we still have the cards because we rented them through February. So we will have to package those up and send them back. But for all intents and purposes, it is ready. I believe tomorrow staff are going to be trained on how to actually check out the materials so we can start using that. Currently, I'm working on the budget narrative, which is due on Monday. There's a slight van update from the numbers that I had in my report, and it's actually going to be $100 cheaper per month to lease it. So for the cost of $2,270 per year, that does include fuel, maintenance, and insurance. We will have access to a van from DPS, and we can do all sorts of things like delivery pilot project, taking twigs around to various places in the city, moving program stuff to the park for outdoor summer reading events. So I think for $189 a month, that's going to be a really good deal. Also, Aaron said we're not locked into a contract. So if we try it out for a few months and we decide, you know, this really isn't something for us, we can get rid of the van, no problem at all. He's also going to put stickers on it that say Royal Oak Public Library with our website and our phone number. And yeah, so Aaron has been awesome working with us with this so far. So I'm excited. And let's see, so painting started on Monday. So far, they've gotten through the 2 quiet study rooms and they started working on the computer lab today. The fish have been temporarily relocated to the storage area. And Jennifer, one of the youth librarians, is looking into seeing if the credit union who sponsored our first fish tank will actually buy us another fish tank. So hopefully that will work. If not, we have some funds for that. And the safe in the director's office is not opening anymore. So we haven't been able to put money in the friend's bag, but I have DPS working on that. If they can't get it open, then we're going to have to call a locksmith. Last night, the city commission approved the 2021 and 2022 goals. And I'm really excited for them because especially their objective 2.1 to attract, retain, and develop city employees aligns exactly with our short-term strategic goal number 2, employ and retain happy, welcoming staff and provide for their development. So I think that that is going to bode really well for our staffing plans. One more thing, the city manager is working on a partnership with Beaumont, and Jennifer, the same librarian for the fish tank, actually reached out to them to see about possibly getting them some donations of our discarded library books. And then we talked about getting library cards for the employees there. They actually cannot access Google from their city computers. So I made a special SurveyMonkey survey so that they can do the registration. That's just for Beaumont. So that's going to go live probably sometime this week too. And that is the interim director report. Do you have any questions?
What questions do you have? Mark?
Yeah, Adrian, I didn't hear that the new figure for the van. Was it 189?
189 per month, 2,270 per year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
I just have to say the fish update was my favorite part.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's big things we're dealing with. And then sometimes it's just like the fish are moved to the storage area and we need to take
Good though.
takes all kinds of things. I like that part too though. They're okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fish are okay. Okay.
Yep, they're doing really well.
All right, good. Carla.
So I was noticing in the youth and teen services report that Amy really spelled out some great things that they have planned for summer reading. And I was really happy to hear that they're utilizing the parks around Royal Oak, since we can't do it outside of the library because of the construction this year. And I think they have wonderful things planned. It sounds like with what she spelled out that there could probably use a little bit more funding. And we've said ever since we put the budget together last year that if they came forward with a plan and they needed more funding, that we could probably make that happen. So I would motion that we increase the programming line of the budget by $2,000 to help cover those expenses for summer programming. And I would add that I don't think we need to do a budget amendment. And for those of you who don't know what so there's a budget amendment and a budget adjustment. Amendments are when we're making a change to the total amount of money being spent in our budget, and that would have to go before the city commission to get approved. But from looking at where the budget's at, and that we're probably not going to be using all of the janitorial and cleaning supplies line, I would suggest that we do a budget adjustment, which we don't need approval for, and we can just reallocate the $2,000 from that line to the programming line. So that would be my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Catherine seconds. Okay, so to clarify for the notes, Erin, are you ready? You have it? You got it, girl.
I'm good.
Need any help?
I'm good.
You got the whole thing. Okay. Discussion. Melanie.
I noticed in the report that Adrian had said that we have $5,000 budgeted for summer reading, and that ends with our budget year that starts July 1st. So I thought she was saying that we already had like enough for sure to get through that, because then the second half of the summer is actually covered by next year's budget. Adrian, did I read that wrong, or is that what you were saying?
I don't remember writing that. Did you see that in Amy's report?
It was
maybe.
Amy's report, yeah.
Okay.
So the way I read it was that she's kind of got to have to hold off on spending the money until July in order to make it all work. That was the way I read it.
Oh, okay. I mean, so I'm totally in favor of giving them whatever money they need. I had read it as like, oh, good, they have plenty of money for summer reading and we can supplement with our next year budget.
I
think
feel,
go ahead.
Sorry, I feel like the line item that Carla pointed out during her budget 101 was programming supplies though, and that was already almost overspent. So I think that she would need that allocated from somewhere else.
And I would say no matter how this shakes out, I'd be happy to see $2,000 more programming out of the library. So even if they want to plan, if they feel like they have it covered, great. If they want to do more programming, I would support that too. I love that idea. More programming. So other discussion.
Wait, so Adrian, are there actually two, I should know this. Are there are two different line items for programming then? And is there a better spot to put it? I'm trying to find the answer too.
Yeah, so I guess I read it as that we need more money in programming, but not the summer reading. But maybe that was what Carla was proposing anyway, and I'm just confused.
Erin.
Yeah, I think there is just the one line item for programming. It's programming supplies and related expenses, and that one is just about completely spent. Sorry.
Two things. I know my kids have attended a lot of the Zoom sessions, and they have to be spending a lot of materials. They're putting together amazing bags for the programs. It is full of good stuff. And also, I wonder if she has to pay up front for some of the things that are later in the summer. So maybe that's why she's paying for things that'll happen later, but they're coming out of this budget.
Any other discussion? So to clarify the motion, it's to move $2,000 from janitorial supplies over to the programming line item to go to programming. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I
All opposed? Let the record reflect that this motion passed unanimously. Okay, anything else in the library? I think it's the first time we've ever had a motion during the library director's report. So congratulations, Carla, on that. Okay. Any other questions about the library director's report? It's me hard to follow that. Okay, we're moving into committee and liaison reports. The first one is budget.
So I don't have anything to give to you all right now, just a brief summary of what we've been doing. We've met 3 times in the last month, and we're working on the budget. We're close to having a draft, but we really need to have more numbers from the city first. So we should have something concrete to present and probably to vote on at our next board meeting. So that is the goal, is that it will be ready to go and we can discuss it, it will be a well thought out plan, but there's always some minor adjustments that get made in that final meeting with the feedback from the board members who are not on the committee. And then we approve it and send it to the city. So next month there will be a big report from us.
Thanks, Carla. Any questions for the budget committee? Because Carla has all the answers, so now's the time. Okay, next, facilities.
The facilities committee has not met since our last board meeting, so I have no report.
Thanks, Mark. Director search committee, Catherine.
I don't have minutes to provide. We're trying to get a meeting scheduled. Basically since the last meeting, everything was handled with the city for Adrian's interim position. And we're just waiting to hear back from Royal Oak HR, whether it's Dennis or his designee, on some potential meeting times. So for the meeting times that have passed, I apologize to you board members on this committee, but I am still waiting to hear back on ones that would be good. I'm going to check back in, and if I have to extend out a little bit, I'll also do that, but I'll notify you.
Thanks, Catherine, for your work on that. Are there any questions about where we are in terms of the director search committee? Okay, next, DDA. Adrian, did you attend?
I
The
did.
DDA is the Downtown Development Authority.
Yes, so they seem to be pretty frustrated because they earmarked $6.5 million for the Centennial Commons, including $1.5 million for the library, but they didn't see that anywhere on the agenda. There is going to be a special meeting tomorrow to talk more about the budget. The city manager wants the park to be built right, and he's concerned that if we just go with a low bidder, that it might not include all of the correct things in a park of that size. So they also are concerned about rebidding, extending the timeline.
Adrian, are there any questions for Adrian? Karen.
Will you be able to attend all the special meetings? And were you able to sit in on the meetings where they were going to discuss the cost, I think it was called cost engineering, to make sure nothing crazy happens right next to the library?
Yes, so the value engineering meetings, I think I may have not been on the invite list, but I should be on it now. And then also Aaron Filipski is at those meetings, and he is an advocate for the library. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have you been able to get on all the right lists at this point, Adrian? I can't imagine what that's like to.
I feel like I don't know what I don't know.
Okay,
so
good. We'll just
when
go
the fence showed up and I wasn't notified, then I was invited to another meeting list.
Excellent.
So the fence showed up. Does that mean they're actually starting work? Like, wait, I'm confused because I thought they didn't have somebody picked yet.
They're getting ready to demo.
Oh,
So
that makes sense.
and they're doing the mitigation work on the buildings.
Exciting times. Even the dog is excited.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, friends of the library. Would that be Mark and Eric? Did you attend together?
Yes, we did.
Oh my gosh, I love it. How'd it go? What'd you learn?
It went well. So I have some notes. And Mark, if I'm missing anything, let me know. So they are developing their budget for the next 6 months. During that process, we also talked about some fundraising ideas. So they're in the process of trying to figure out some fundraising ideas for this year. They talked about a plant sale that they're potentially doing. And then I think they're just kind of open to any potential ideas for fundraising. What did I miss, Mark? I know I missed a few things.
Oh, no, that's fine, Eric. I did have a few other things. I hadn't been attended a Friends meeting in some time. So the first thing that struck me was that they're shorthanded. They have 3 vacancies. And those of you who are familiar with the Friends Board, several of those vacancies are a result of people who played significant roles leaving the Friends. And I'm talking about Lindsay and Melissa. And I don't remember the gentleman's name. There was a younger fella, everybody's younger than I am, who was had a lot of good ideas about fundraising. He seems to have left the Friends Board as well. So as I say, they have 3 vacancies. I believe one of the members is, well, she's certainly new to me and maybe a newer member. Her name is Nina Walker. I don't know if anyone's familiar with her. Also, the corresponding secretary, John Pellegrino, who's been there a long time. His wife passed away in November, and I just wanted to share that with you. I didn't know that. And as far as the treasury, the Friends treasury, so as Eric said, they had a 6-month budget because of the uncertainty with COVID and the feeling that they wouldn't have much revenue. They budgeted income of about $3,400. They've actually received about $2,300. So even what they budgeted, which was a low amount, is down. The new budget will be proposed at the March meeting, as Eric said. As far as the funds that the Friends have available, their savings, between their money market and checkbook balances, they have $21,700. So I made a point of letting them know that in our budget for the next fiscal year, the library board, regardless of the funds that the Friends have available, the library board intends to fund, fully fund, or recommend to the board to fully fund the programming budget to the tune of, I believe, and I may be misspeaking here, I think it was 38,000 on the wish list for programming between youth and adult. And so as far as programs for the remainder of this fiscal year and programs for the next fiscal year, Mitzi and the rest of the Friends were open to receiving a list of programming items that they might be able to fund with some of those $21,000 that they have in savings. So I think Adrian has addressed that with staff, and that process has begun of letting the Friends know what items might be appropriate for them to fund. Book donations, they are beginning to scan again. Donations are coming in slowly because most people don't know that we're accepting, the library's accepting donations. They have begun putting a flyer, the Friends have, in the book bags that go out at curbside. So people who pick up books will know that if they have books to donate, they can do that now that the library is receiving those. Membership. Current membership in the Friends is 212, but they're getting very few renewals. I think that's because of Melissa leaving the board. She was, and did a great job with membership. So there aren't emails or digital reminders or snail mail, for that matter, going out to people. So here again, one of their ideas was the Friends has a brochure that they have produced. I think it's been around a while, but they also talked about the possibility of putting those in the book bags curbside, either as a reminder for current Friends members or new members or new people who might be interested in joining the Friends. And then what little scanning's been done, they've gotten a little revenue, but they're having some of the hardware and software is old downstairs. They've been having trouble with the printers and some of the computers. So I'm thinking that they may at some point want to spend some of that revenue or savings that they have on perhaps some new hardware for the scanning room. So next meeting is March 15th, and I believe I plan on being there, and I assume Eric as well. So yeah, there you have it. Any questions?
Melanie.
Not sure if this is for Mark or Catherine or Stacy or who this is for, but what are the rules about trustees serving on the Friends board? Like, is there a maximum number?
There are no rules. They're their own separate 501c3.
So technically we could all, I mean, I'm not saying we should, but we could fill those. Or you know who else is available? Emily Dumas.
That's true. You should talk to her about that, Melanie.
Bet she's gonna jump on it. Why are you laughing, Adrian?
Text her right away.
Okay, but anyway, just for the new board members, like if Friends of the Library is, obviously all wrapped up in all the library happenings, and we want them to be functioning really well and be fully staffed, so that they can continue to do the good work that they're doing that supports the library programming. So if anyone's interested in that, yeah, it's available.
And also I dropped in the chat, but it's customary for board members to join the Friends of the Library Board. I ended up just becoming like a lifetime member because I would forget anyway, I just ended up becoming a lifetime member. That's what I did. And so what the mission of that organization is to support the Royal Oak Public Library. So they're the ones that have the shop inside the library that sells the books, and they do the book sale, and they have volunteers that run their entire operation, and they're really good friends to the library. They're aptly named. So what I'm not sure about is, I feel like when I became a member, I filled out like a little form, but I'm wondering, is there now a digital way to do this? Does anyone know?
There is. There's at least a digital way to pay. Yeah, there is.
Okay. Is it? They are linked on our website. Is that still how you would join? Maya was asking, so I was gonna. Mark.
I believe it's through their Facebook page. You can pay using PayPal through their Facebook page. That's what I did.
So it's the $200, right? Is that what you?
Well, I did the lifetime thing. You don't have to do that. That's what I did because I would forget to join.
I think it's like $10 a year. It
Yeah.
might be.
Okay.
They might have increased it to maybe 15, maybe, but it's pocket money.
Yep. Adrian.
Now I definitely need to sign up for Facebook.
There might be a link on the website too.
The link on the website just goes to a PDF.
That's
Okay.
what I was just going to say. It's a form that you need to fill out.
Yeah, but another way that we can support the Friends too, make sure that the Friends of the Royal Oak Public Library is your Amazon Smile donation and also your Kroger Community Rewards member, which you have to do the Kroger every year, but Smile stays that way until you change it.
Okay.
Oh,
Maya. Sorry, Maya.
oh, it's okay. Miss Adrian, what do you mean by the Amazon and the Kroger and the Smile thing?
That's
What
a
are you
great
referring
question.
to? Yeah.
So if you shop on Amazon, but you type in smile.amazon.com, Then all of your purchases, if they're eligible for Amazon Smile, give them, I believe, 0.25%. And they disperse it quarterly. Kroger Rewards is tied to your Kroger card. So if you have an online account with them, you can go on and set your charity, and then they donate a set percentage of the groceries that you buy at Kroger.
Oh, so it's like two connected websites, I guess. Maybe. Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you have more questions about how to sign up for it, I can do some screenshots and send them to you.
Yeah, could you please send those to me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Friends liaisons? Nice job, you guys. I love that you went together. I mean, separately from your own homes, but all at the same time. Okay, next we have so city commission liaisons, and I think what happened is Adrian went to the city commission. I mean, went from her house to the city commission to their virtual meeting. Anything to report?
The first one of the month was Emily's goodbye meeting and my introduction meeting, and so we shared some prepared statements. The mayor had some really nice words to say about the library, so if you want to go back on the YouTube and watch that. Then the second meeting of the month was really short, but that was where they talked about the city's strategic goals, which I already mentioned.
Thanks, Adrian. And what we're doing, since it's become a virtual meeting and for the city commission, we've decided to sort of just maybe quarterly get on the agenda and have a spot with some featured things to say about the library. And we thought probably the next time that made sense to go would be when we move into our next phase of whatever kind of reopening. If it's an appointment, like the appointment system, that would be a good venue to use to update the community about that. So, all right, next, policy review. You guys have been busy.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to summarize this. I don't take great notes when I'm trying to lead a meeting, so I'm not sure that my report is all that great, but there were some really interesting topics up front, so I want the board to be aware of these discussions that will be coming down the road in front of you. So the first one, which was in Adrian's library director's report, was about the new hours. So just broadly, there was a concern in the library director's evaluation that there wasn't enough time for the whole staff to meet. So Adrian's kind of noodling on that. She's working with staff. She had one proposal that we had talked about, but it sounds like she's now kind of gone through and has a different proposal that she's thinking about. So long story short, we're thinking of ways to get Adrian's thinking of ways to get the staff all together for these meetings. So we might be seeing something about that may or may not involve closing for a few hours. It sounds like maybe not anymore, but that's the latest on that. The library delivery pilot project was also, Adrian talked about that. That was the van from GPS. So it sounds like we knocked down $10 a month off of it, and it gets us even closer to the current cost of the postage we have for this program, which is $120 a month already. So it's not, the cost is just the differential between those two. We're already, so this is, we're bringing books to people who can't come to the curbside to get them. And so instead of mailing them to them, we would have this van that would do it. And then the van, I mean, as Adrian mentioned, does other things as well. Like it can take staff and materials to events, and it can drop off the kits for the books, the programs. I'm not sure they're going to do that, but it could do many things. And Adrian kind of played this out for us as being, Mark and I had been thinking about it as being primarily for homebound residents who weren't able to come. And Adrian had been saying that it's possible we could expand really to anyone. And Mark and I were like, oh, what does she mean? But what she means is that using My Libro, you could have on Monday, just Monday, have all time slots. And then, you can prioritize the homebound residents for those and then open the rest up. So that every Monday the van will go. And if the slots are filled, you don't get your books delivered that week. But it could be, obviously it could be a really popular thing. I think I was saying I would take advantage of it. So anyway, that's something I'm going to work on drafting a policy for it. I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but that's going to be at our next policy review meeting this month. And so hopefully we'll be bringing you something back at the end of March. And then library fines. So we've talked about as a board before eliminating library fines, and Carla emailed us to ask hey, where do we stand on this? Because they need to know for the budgeting. And so Adrian brought some good points forward about Some of the things she said was that the statistics show that in fact, that in fact there's a better rate of return for library materials if fines are eliminated, because people, don't have that angst about returning it and having the fine number go up. And it's at about $33,000 to the library, so it's not an insignificant amount, but it's not by far the majority of the money that we have coming in. And it is a huge issue for equity and access to the library services. So with all those things, Mark and I are generally in favor of this, and we have the sense from previous discussions, although the board looked a little bit different then, that many of the trustees are as well. So I think we're looking at, again, for our next policy meeting, putting together what that would look like. Adrian agreed that obviously things like Chromebooks and Wi-Fi hotspots, there have to be some overdue fines on that, or, free Chromebook. And then the discussion we were having was about new materials and whether or not new materials needed to have fines as well. So I think we'll bring some proposal to you back in March. So look for that. And then lastly, reopening the library. So as the numbers continue to improve and the vaccines are going out there, we're looking at what the library reopening will look like. And we have this very set phased plan. So for the new members, you can look at it's posted on our website, and it's linked to the Michigan Safe Start map, which has a letter grade for each region. And so we're still in the correct phase based on the region that is associated in the Safe Start map. But we're actually getting close to the next one. And so the next one would be a grab and go library model. And so one thing we talked about was having an interim step, which I think we had talked about as a whole board before, that would be like an appointments model. So that there would be, again, this could be through MyLibro, Adrian was saying, where people could make appointments to come into the library and do a little bit of browsing, and then we could control the flow in that way. The other thing we talked about was that even if the numbers drop to 0 tomorrow or something like that, we're in the middle of a renovation. So it's not exactly the right time for us to be suddenly throwing our doors open. We kind of had planned this to be done while it was closed. And so now that the renovation has started, it looks like at least until the end of this month, even if we were to go to 0, we're going to be waiting until the renovation is complete and then taking a look at the numbers again. So Adrian's going to take a stab at the that middle phase that we're thinking about, the appointment phase, and then we're going to be reevaluating when the renovation gets closer to complete. And Adrian also mentioned in her director's report that a lot of staff are concerned about, there's a lot of staff who are high risk and are concerned about being in the building with patrons coming in. So she's working, it sounds like, with the city to make sure that people are having at the top of the list for their vaccine access as appropriate. So yeah, that was it. Fun stuff, I thought.
Thank you so much, Policy Review Committee. Are there questions right now? There are discussion items on our agenda coming up, which are fines and the reopening plan update. So if you've got questions about that, that's going to be those are specific discussion items. But if anything else, do you have questions for all of the things that Melanie just said? Erin.
I have a question. This is probably more for Adrian. When you take away fines, does it impact the books that are exchanged through the library network? If another library doesn't have that policy and I'm holding their book for 2 months because there's no fine to me, how does that play into other libraries?
So that's a great question, because obviously not all the libraries in the library network are fine free, but some are. So we've actually got some good examples for how there are different ways to handle it. If a book is checked out and then it's 21 days past its due date, it does go into lost status. So when an item is lost, even if you just have one lost item on your account does become blocked. So if you have an item that's out for that long, you won't be able to check out any more items until you either pay for that item or bring it back. The libraries that have gone fine-free have a couple different settings. Either their patrons are fine-free, where no matter what library item they check out, because they are a patron of that library, they do not get fines. Or the other option would be to have that library's items be fine free. So if a Ferndale patron checked out a Royal Oak item and it was 3 days overdue, it would not have any overdue fines because by virtue of it being a Royal Oak item. So that would be something that we would need to decide how we would want our patrons to look. I feel like going the item fine free way would be better because we're not saying blanket all of our items are fine free. So we can do it by media type. So we could say leave new materials with fines, library of things, Chromebooks and hotspots with fines, and then make everything else fine free.
Thank you.
Other questions for policy review? We're about to move into the fines discussion, so we can talk more about that in a second. All right, let's move in formally into the discussion items then. We're on the fines discussion, and Erin has kicked us off with the question about, you know, how this impacts the fact that we're in a cooperative, how does that impact, you know, the way we do business? So what I'll say about where we are on the agenda is that we're not going to take any action tonight on this. It's a discussion item. So what this is meant to do is surface questions, concerns, thinking, positions of library board members. The policy review committee is working on this, so they'll be listening for all of that, and they will meet between now and next month, and sounds like they might have something ready as soon as next month for us to maybe even take some action on. Maybe, if it ends up there, yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're not making decisions tonight, we're discussing it tonight. So with that, on fines, I wonder if someone might give a little background about where this conversation comes from and why we're having it in the first place. I feel like Adrian actually might be a good person to talk about. I know you feel pretty passionate.
Yeah, so the idea of libraries going fines free is relatively new. It's like Melanie said, it has a lot to do with equity and access and removing barriers to the library. So the major library systems that have gone fine free, like Chicago, have reported massive returns after going fine free because people, you know, they want to bring their items back. They were just scared because of the fines that were on there. There's also been studies that people view fines as like paying for extra time with your book. So they're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just keep it for another week because that's another $1, where they're keeping it out of the hands of someone else. One of the library systems in Colorado where I used to live went fine free pretty early. And they actually went fine free, and they don't charge replacement costs either. And they send out notices to their patrons, and they just say like, hey, your neighbor down the street might be waiting for this, please bring it back. And they've had really good luck with that. So it's definitely something that is gaining traction in the library world right now.
Okay, so with that, I might turn it over to Carla for Carla's take on, you know, how much do we collect in fines from the library in a normal year, maybe, but because during the pandemic we decided not to collect fines.
So
Or
on
no.
in a normal year, we've been collecting around $33,000 of revenue from fines. Yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
I'm sorry, that revenue line is fines, but it's also auditorium rental fees.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be just a $33,000 hit if we're ever able to rent the auditorium again.
And yeah, hopefully at some point we will. So it's somewhere in that range though. And the budget committee has said before that if it was something that the trustees wanted to do, we could afford to not do it. It affects, our budget. We can't do everything we want to do. But if it's something that we wanted, like, we can afford to do it and we can make it work. So I had a question for Adrian. Could you just explain how the fine free or the auto renewal or whatever has been going on during the pandemic, how that's been happening? And is it likely that that's the same process that we would be taking going forward if we voted for this, or would it possibly be a different method?
So during the pandemic, we have been checking everything in with a no fine setting. That is just a blanket fine forgiveness for any items. I think if we were to vote on it, we would go a different route, which would be to change the parameters based on the media type within the catalog. So that's a lot of jargon, but that's something that TLN would be able to make change on an item per item basis. Auto renewal is something that also started during the pandemic. So those of you who aren't familiar with that, 3 days before your items are due, if no one is waiting and you have renewals available, the system will send you an email saying, hey, your items were checked out again for 3 more weeks. That does extend it from the due date, not from the renewal date. So that gives people potentially up to 9 weeks with items before they would start getting any fines.
And then at what point, or is that something that we would be deciding, is an item considered lost? And so then the replacement fee would be charged. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm. An item is considered lost 21 days after the due date. So if somebody had it for the full auto renewal period, they would have it for 9 weeks, and then 3 more weeks after that, it would become lost. Now we do contract with a collection agency called Unique Management Services, but it's like a kinder, gentler collection agency. And they specialize in getting materials returned. So if a person brings their items back, then they don't have to pay fines on that. Just the collection agency fine.
Okay, other questions or comments around fines? Something in, again, we're thinking about things that the policy review committee might consider as they draft this policy for us. Mark.
Yeah, so Carla said that the revenue from fines and rental of the auditorium is about $33,000, which is about 1.2% of our revenue. So it's not a lot, but it's not insignificant. But as has been mentioned, there still will be some revenue from fines on items, new items, and so on, the things that Adrian mentioned. And we'll still have revenue from the auditorium at some point. So I feel pretty strongly about it, about going fine-free to the extent that we've talked about it, because as others have mentioned, it's a barrier to access to the library. And it's a barrier to access, especially to lower income people. So I think it's where libraries are headed, that we have to, seek other sources of revenue and not depend on monies from fines. So if and when this comes to a vote, which I assume it will at our next meeting, I'll certainly be in support of moving in this direction.
Thanks, Mark. Sharon.
I just pipe in and say I agree. I love this idea. I think it's a great way to go. And I keep thinking of that Shel Silverstein poem about the little old man who has the library book that's like 42 years overdue, and what's he going to do? And I remember even being as a kid, that it was stressful. Like I remember finding something and then discovering it was like a year overdue and panicking. So I think it's a good way to go.
Melanie, and then Mark.
So I just want to say that there was debate at policy review, at least, about new items and charging fines. I think Adrian's preference would be that we not have fines on new items. And Mark and I were less certain, but that's one of the things that we'd like people's input on, is whether or not new items. And if, Adrian, and Mark, if you want to weigh in on your, I think, stronger than my positions on this, I think I would lean towards no fines, but I could go either way.
Well, Mark was next anyway, so Mark.
I'll pass. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, Carla.
So I have another question. There's some items that you can't renew because there's holds on them from other people. Isn't that right? So how would that be affected? How would that situation play out?
If an item can't be renewed because it's on hold, then it would become overdue if it's not returned. And if the person held on to it for 3 weeks, it would go into lost status too.
So like new items, it would be more likely for that to happen because there's more interest in them being checked out, right?
Yes.
Mark.
So Adrian, people ought to know, it's correct that their card will be blocked after 21 days, right?
Yes.
So yeah, if they haven't returned the book, they're not going to be able to check out more books.
Right. And so it's the blocking thresholds are 1 lost item or 10 overdue items. So if a person has a stack of books that they have not returned or been able to renew, but they haven't gone lost yet, if it's over 10, their card will still be blocked. I have one other thing to say too, but Catherine can go first.
Okay, Catherine.
I don't mean, I thought you were done, but I just wanted to echo my support for it. I worked in a library for a number of years, and in that time, we were talking about it then, and I read up on not only the positives of it that we're talking about, but also evidence, like Adrian, like you said, of that it works and it does okay when it's been done and it's being done and it's not harmful. And so as long as it's not harmful for us, which I wouldn't say that it seems it is, I'm also in favor.
Adrian.
I did attend a webinar with 4 libraries across the country who have gone fine free, and one had a really good idea. Their patrons, like a lot of them viewed fines as kind of their donation to the library. So they just rebranded it and said, there are no fines, but if you want to make a donation, or in the past, you would have been charged 25 cents for being late one day. And then a lot of people would just hand them $1 and say, well, here you go. So they ended up actually making more money.
We use that trick at bake sales. If you don't put a price and just say pay whatever, you actually get more.
I'd like to say a couple things about this. So the whole time I feel like I've been on the board, this conversation has come up at different points in time, and I support it. So that's the first thing for a few reasons. One is I'm very interested in increasing access to the library for all users in the community. 2, I don't want people to feel bad about the library. I don't want it to be any like feelings of shame associated with it, or I don't want any of that going on. I want it to be a place everyone feels welcome. 3, it feels like great timing. I think it's gonna be very tricky to come off of a pandemic where we've not done fines and then come back to fines. I think it's not great. And I'm wondering about what the return rate has been with this in this no fine period. We've sort of piloted no fines for different reasons, but we've sort of piloted. So if you have any information on that, I'd like to hear it. Of course, there might be other reasons people aren't returning stuff in a timely fashion in a pandemic too. So I don't know, maybe that's grain of salt stuff. The other thing I'd like to say is that budgets reflect values. And part of what we say in our budget when we rely for revenues on something like fines is I don't love. And so I'd be happy to figure out how to find that revenue elsewhere in a way that aligns with our values and our mission as a library. So I totally support this, and I think we can figure it out. Mark.
I also want to mention the impact for staff. One of the points of conflict for staff with patrons is fines, and it can be unpleasant. So this would, to a large extent, remedy that, as well as free up time for staff that they presently use to deal with issues related to fines. So I think it's a win-win for staff and for patrons.
You did make me think of something else though, Mark, and that is a couple years ago when we were having this conversation, I don't remember who brought this up, but there were local, maybe was it local libraries that had experimented with fine freeze, and actually there were places in the community that really pushed back and didn't like it. Like there was this feeling in the community about like they maybe liked the punitive nature of it. If it's late, you should pay. Two, maybe are worried about losing the materials. I don't know. There could be lots of reasons, but there was pushback in some of these communities where they got rid of fines. So I think that's okay, but I think that is informative for us to think about ways to message this and communicate the why behind it and the what. And I think Adrian's point about like, you can still give donations to the library and, is important. So I think it's something we should be thoughtful about when we announce it. How, if this passes, we're not deciding this tonight, but if we have this way, I think it's important to communicate our why to folks and be real clear about it. Melanie.
Okay, that's something I do for a living, so I'm happy to help with that.
Sharon can help us. Good. Melanie.
I agree. I agree with exactly what you just said, and you gave me an idea. So building on Adrian's idea that if you can say this is what you would have paid or whatever, you're welcome to give a donation. I wonder if we could have that just be a regular part of it, and if we could create one of those little magical texts where you can be like, hey, there's no fine, but if you want to text fine free to 21212, then that'll automatically give $1 to the library or something like that. And then because I feel like were me, I would pay, but I don't carry cash. So anyway, that was just an idea that I had.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of creative options for this that are available to us.
I also wanted to ask, no one said anything about new items. I need feedback on new items.
Right, new items. Catherine had her hand up. It may not be about new items, but we will talk about new items.
It wasn't. I think that just to piggyback on what you said, Stacy, I think that the why is important for some people, but for other people, the evidence also is part of it. It's not the touchy-feely stuff or the equity stuff, but more of a scientific evidence-based kind of reason. And I think that we have that. So when communicating it, that would also be good to share.
Agreed. Erin.
Stacy, you had asked a question of Adrian, and I was curious what the answer would be. We have all these data points. We've been fine free and on auto renewal for so long. What are the return rates?
I have it written down to check when I get back to the statistics system tomorrow.
Thank you.
Right. That might be something just like in policy review to look at. It might be something to consider. It feels like we've accidentally piloted it, Carla and then Erin.
All right, so my thoughts on new items. So I think it would be confusing to patrons if most of the books don't have fines and then a few of them do. I think that would be confusing, but I do understand. And also if there's a hold on it, then the demand for it is to, it speeds up the process of getting it back. But then I was thinking, it's like, well, a lot of people, especially with the new items, they like to browse. And if they're always, in somebody's house on their table, unless there's a hold on it, which then it automatically goes back to somebody else, then it's not on our shelves for people to browse. So that's the one thing that I could see that it would, it might help to get it back on the shelves even when there aren't holds on it. But I mean, I think it would be too confusing. So my vote would probably be not to treat them differently.
Erin.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I felt it was a bit confusing. Also, doesn't it create more work for the staff constantly having to monitor when does a book not become new anymore? And then do you have to watch for it to come back so you can change the status on it? It's just more work for you guys as well. So I personally would not support including having fines on new materials, but I do support a no fines policy.
Catherine.
I think it's also, I agree with the confusion, and so I wouldn't treat them differently. But I think it's also contradictory when we say that this can work and we say that, this is that people bring stuff back, and then we say, but not the new items. So
Yeah.
I think that treating everything the same would be optimal.
Agreed. Anybody else? Melanie?
Okay, so for the question, I think I'm going to throw to Adrian. So if no fines on anything, new items, if they have a hold on them, remind me. Remind me if they have
renew. You can't renew with a hold, correct?
You can't renew, but they still wouldn't get fined, so they could still hold on to it.
It starts the 21-day clock.
Starts the 21-day clock.
You
Would we
can't
send
borrow
more?
anything else?
Is there something we could else we do? That's I guess what I'm trying to figure out. Is there something else we can do? And also for the browsing issue, can we just not allow renewals, period? And then so that they do bring, I don't know.
You can change the renewal parameters for new items to say no renewals. So that could potentially be an option. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
I feel like that was a good answer, actually. That feels like a good solution. If the problem we're trying to solve is making sure that folks have the most amount of people have access to the most amount of new materials and can browse it, the answer is to get it back to the building faster, right? I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. So right now, our new books stay new between 3 and 6 months. One suggestion that I've heard from various webinars is leave your new books new for 12 months. That way they don't rotate out as quickly. And then we could do that. And if we don't charge fines for new items, it wouldn't be as much of a burden on staff to go hunt down those new items to make them unnewed.
Erin.
When we had talked about this a few months ago, the library network opened it up so we could all borrow each other's new materials. Is that still going to be in place when everything starts opening back up? That doesn't take care of the browsing issue, but it does take care of that issue. We don't just have access to the copies at the Royal Oak Library. You're on a hold list for all of the copies.
Yeah, there is a push to get more libraries to agree to that as well.
Okay.
And also Royal Oak is a net borrower. So we borrow more items than we send to the consortium, which is interesting to me since we are a Class 6 library, which is the biggest one for those of you who don't know the class system.
Guess we got Class 7 borrowers here in Royal Oak.
Yes, we do.
So that makes me wonder then about, does the committee need feedback about this concept about, is the fine free connected to the item or connected to the borrower?
I think Adrian made a good case for it being the item.
The Chromebooks is what does it for me.
Now, one thing about the Chromebooks and the hotspots, as soon as they become overdue, Ed can turn them into a brick. So they could physically have the Chromebook, but it would not do them any good.
I don't know what happened there, but Harry Potter just came in my mind. I don't know what the end result was.
Ed is a magician, wizard, and our ed tech person. So that's Ed. He can turn things into bricks if necessary. So wait, walk me through this. You're saying, okay, let's say I'm a Royal Oak card holder. I get a item from another library that does collect fines and I return it late. Do I get fined?
If we don't make our patrons fine free, yes, you would.
Oh, that's gonna be confusing for people.
Yeah, we could just say patrons and items are fine free at Royal Oak. There is precedent for that within TLN.
That feels like that might be the way to go. People might be like, you said we're fine free. Why am I paying fines? That's gonna be very confusing. Erin.
Also, you just said that we are one of the biggest borrowers. I know myself, I bet I have probably 100 books. In fact, I have 91 books checked out right now, and half of them came from other libraries. So
Yeah,
I
no.
just put mine on time, but I'd really be in trouble if I didn't.
I've had issues with TLN. I'll pick items that are in stock in Royal Oak, but then it sends it from another library, and
Yeah.
it does that automatically. So that would be really frustrating if I was thinking that it was coming from Royal Oak because I made sure it was available at Royal Oak, and then I got fines because they sent it from somewhere else.
Yeah, the algorithm tries to balance it. They said that it's set to pull from Royal Oak first, but if we don't get to that hold in time and the list rebalances, it could go to another library.
Melanie?
So other library just doesn't fine our patrons, or do we pay it?
So if another library has fines and our patron returns it late, then the fine can be collected by Royal Oak, or if they pay it online, then the money will go to that library.
But if we're saying the patrons are fine free, does the library, go ahead.
Nope, then nobody would get any fine revenue from that patron.
Okay, so the other libraries are just like, fine, Royal Oak library patrons don't.
Yeah, right now there is an agreement where we can collect fines from other libraries and put it into our revenue. We just can't collect replacement fees from other libraries' items.
Adrian, do you happen to know, first of all, do you know how many libraries are in our cooperative is called TLN. Do you know how many libraries are in our cooperative?
There are 75, but I think it's like 62 that are in the shared system.
Okay, and do you know about how many of them are fine free? Ish.
I feel like it's more than 10, possibly 15 last time we made a list of it.
Okay.
And then Ferndale is our closest neighbor that has some items that are fine free.
Okay, so what other things would you want the policy review committee to think about when they're drafting this policy around fines? Sounds like I'm not, by the way, if there are folks that are really interested in fines, you should also speak up. It'd be important to hear from you too.
So one concern I've always had with this is, that circulation would not be as quick and efficient, and we would end up needing to have more books on hand in order to fulfill the demand from people who want to check out books, but other people are holding on to them for longer. And I don't feel like I've ever really heard that addressed clearly, that the libraries who have adopted a fine-free policy haven't had these issues with circulation where all of a sudden there's a bigger need for funding for books. Because it's one thing if we just don't collect the money for fines, but if we also need to add another $30,000 to books every year, that doubles the financial impact.
I haven't heard any libraries that have had to put more money in their book budget lines, but I would like to point out that our budget lines are underspent right now for books. There are also reports that we can run of holds parameters that will help us make targeted purchases so that those popular items don't run out as fast. So that might be something to consider for including in the policy, making a set parameter of like 3 holds per item. And then if it goes beyond that parameter, we will automatically buy another copy.
That would not need to be something that's in the policy, luckily. That would just be a practice that you guys sort out as we go. So that's the good news about that. Okay, any other things, Mark?
Well, just some perspective on it. So $33,000, and say some of that is auditorium fees. So let's say 25,000 comes from fees and fines. In my opinion, one of the biggest problems facing the library is we are short-staffed. We don't have enough people working at the library to meet the needs of the community. And so staff has made clear through their wish lists year after year that they would like to see some part-time staff made full-time. We're going to need some, we're going to have this beautiful maker space, but we don't have anyone to work in that area to facilitate patrons' use of that. So when you're talking about giving up 25,000, you're talking about 25,000 that otherwise might be used to augment the wages of a staff person, to make someone full-time, to pay for their benefits, that kind of thing. So we're subtracting, but we're not adding. And I'm not saying this because I'm opposed to going fine-free, but there's a cost to doing it. And our revenue is down and likely will be down for a couple of years in some of the minor revenue categories. But when you add them up, it becomes a substantial amount of money. I mean, our main source of revenue, our 1 mil levy, is stable and will continue to increase unless, you know, something unforeseen happens. Even through the pandemic, property values in Royal Oak have continued to rise. So you have that. But just you know, when we're discussing these things, we have to weigh, you know, what the cost is and how that money could be used otherwise.
It's good perspective, Mark. I'd also like to add, and I think this is connected to our next conversation we're about to have, I think we're about ready to move into, which has to do with fund balance guidelines. So another interesting thing that's happened on the library every year since I've been on the board since 2012 is we end up with surplus, meaning we take in more money than we spend. Even when there have been many years, especially in the recession, where we planned on going into our savings, our fund balance, and then like something weird happens and we end up with weird revenue that's been unexpected, and then we don't go into fund balance and we in fact add. So another way to think about it is we've been contributing to fund balance every year. So while it's a $25,000 line item, it's a hit, maybe it's not terrible. So maybe this is something maybe to also think about in our fund balance discussion. But before we move into fund balance, I want to make sure that everyone has said all the things they'd like to say right now to the policy review committee. And I'm wondering, so in the policy review committee, we have Melanie and Mark, and there's room for up to 2 more trustees on that committee. So that might be something to think about, because it's an exciting way to learn about the library too, by the way. I'm looking, see Sharon going, So it's something to think about. Carla.
I just wanted to put in a quick plug, since you brought it up, that the millage committee could probably use another committee member.
Excellent. Okay. Anything else on the fines discussion? Okay. We look forward to next month with whatever you draft. So next month we're gonna be approving a budget and maybe getting rid of fines, it sounds like. That's an exciting meeting. Okay. Next, we're moving to fund balance guidelines. In your packet, there is a proposal to consider for discussion. We're not voting on it tonight. We're discussing it, but we could vote on it next time. And in the proposal, it gives a little background about what is fund balance and what have you. But I wonder if Mark has been an excellent advocate for having the board consider thinking about some guidelines for and being strategic and intentional about our fund balance. And so I'm wondering if Mark might say a few things to get us going for this discussion tonight.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I wonder, Adrian, can you share the relevant pages in the board packet so that people can refer to what I'm talking about?
All right, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Cool.
All righty. So as Stacy said, at the end of any given fiscal year, our fiscal year ends June 30th. If revenues exceed expenditures for that fiscal year, we have a fund balance. Another way of thinking about it is it's our savings. So as Stacy indicated, for a number of years, we've had a fund balance that has grown year to year. In other words, revenues are exceeding expenditures on an annual basis. That will come to a screeching halt this year because we're spending a big chunk of our fund balance on our renovation. But think of a fund balance as the library's savings. And as I say, the most accurate way to know what we have in our fund balance is to look at the most recent end of year financial report that's audited by the city's auditors. And so we have a substantial fund balance. We have $1.5 million, which is more than 50% of our total expenditures. But when we look at that, that figure, that $1.5 million, and we break it down by fund balance categories, we see that we don't actually have $1.5 million in discretionary money. In other words, it's not all money that we're free to spend. And so I want to look for a moment. So let me back up. So the library board has no policy on how much is enough or how much is too much fund balance. Any public body has an obligation to seek to maintain a fund balance. You've heard the term rainy day fund. It's another way to think of a fund balance. So if we had an unexpected expenditure, if all of a sudden the boiler went out and we had to replace it, we have monies because we have savings, we have a fund balance. But the taxpayers in the city of Royal Oak don't pay taxes for the library for us to hoard the money. So you can have too little and you can have too much. So most public bodies adopt a formal policy about how much fund balance is enough. And generally, they will adopt a range. For instance, the city of Royal Oak has a policy of maintaining a fund balance a minimum of 10%, but not more than 25%. So what the budget committee is bringing to you tonight to discuss is a proposal to be voted on at a later date that the library board maintain an unassigned fund balance at least equal to 15% of budgeted expenditures, but not more than 25% of budgeted expenditures. And notice that I said unassigned fund balance, because not all our fund balance, that $1.5 million, is unassigned. So let's look at those categories. You've got, within the fund balance, you've got restricted fund balance. Those are amounts that are restricted by outside parties for a specific use. For instance, we have to maintain, the most recent and accurate figure is about $75,000 in reserve to pay for accumulated benefits that employees receive when they retire. They might be a payout of sick days, unused sick days. They might be a payout of unused vacation days. We call them other post-employee benefits, OPEB. So part of our fund balance, about $75,000, has to be restricted for that purpose. We also have a donation that was made some years ago that was explicitly for local history and for developing our local history collection, and that use for improving the local history room. And so we have about $43,000 there that is also restricted. Then another fund balance category is committed fund balance. So we talked about the RFID tagging. That was $80,000 in this fiscal year. We have authorized renovation expenses of $482,000 and lighting updates of $77,000. So those monies, those portions of that $1.5 million are already committed and can't be spent. They're committed by action of the library board. Assigned fund balance are those amounts of fund balance that are constrained by the board's intent to use them for a specific purpose in the future. And right now, we don't have any assigned fund balance. So what remains is unassigned fund balance. That's monies that we're free to use as the board sees fit for capital expenditures. In other words, we don't use them to fund line items in an annual budget. We use fund balance to fund capital expenditures, long-term, improvements to the building, new furniture, the renovation project, good example of capital expenditures. So when we take that into consideration, if you look at the audited figures down at the bottom, we have an unassigned fund balance. Out of that $1.5 million, we have an unassigned fund balance of about $707,000, which is about 25% of our total expenditures. Now, so our proposal is that we maintain a range, 15 to 25%, minimum being 15, maximum 25. That means we'd have to maintain a minimum of about $420,000 in unassigned fund balance year to year, and a maximum of around $700,000 in unassigned fund balance. We are spending, this year we're spending down our fund balance substantially, and we know from the Plant Moran Cresser report that we need to grow it going forward. So we're going to have to start looking at how we do that over time, because we have several $1 million over the next 10 years in capital expenditures that are outlined in that Plant Moran Cresser report. So I think I'll stop there, and maybe I've said too much. People are confused. Maybe I should answer some questions.
You kidding? I love Mark in teacher mode. Perfect. Okay, what questions do folks have? Catherine.
I don't have a question per se, but I just think that it makes sense. This is, as Mark noted, a common thing for people to have enough on hand, but not hoard money. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
Melanie.
Can you hear me? Okay, you can hear me. So when we talked about this a little bit, I think it published it for you, I'm not sure, when we were talking about the fines, I think. So a large part of our budget goes towards a debt that will be paid off. Carla, fill in the date now.
June 1st, 2023.
Okay. So I just want to throw that out there as we think about ways to grow our fund balance, that there will be a pretty significant change in our finances 2 years down the road that I hope will start to grow it at that point. But no, I agree with everything that Mark said tonight. And I agree with Catherine's evaluation that it seems like a great, reasonable and important thing to do.
Mark.
Yeah, Melanie's referring to a bond issue that the city made to raise funds for an earlier renovation of a library that occurred in 2005, 2006. Those bonds were 18-year bonds, and they will be paid off, as I said, June 1st, 2023. And between principal and interest, as Melanie said, that's about $280,000. We also, and this is just, I'm just throwing this out there, we don't levy the full 1 mil because of the Headley rollback. When we go for a renewal of our millage, we may also want to go for a restoration or a new millage that would restore the full mill. And I haven't done the calculations precisely, but I think if that were to pass, beginning in 2024, that could amount to another $250,000 in revenue, given that it's about 10% of our current millage. So yeah, there's ways to grow going forward, but but we also, as I alluded to in the other discussion, I mean, we've got real personnel needs at the library, as well as capital needs. So we're going to need those monies in the next 10 years. We're not going to be able to accumulate. We're going to need to spend.
Other questions or discussion about this? Next month, it'll come back as an action item. So any feedback now would be helpful because we can, the budget committee can rework this proposal that you see at the top there to reflect the needs. Carla.
So I would just point out that this isn't really a discussion about, you know, what we want to be spending our money on. It's that just should we keep these, what is the guideline that we want to set for how to not overspend and not underspend, so that we're making sure that we have a guideline in place so that to make sure that we are being mindful to use the money that we get from our taxpayers in an appropriate way.
Melanie.
Right. I think I agree with Carla. Like, I think if we had had this plan in place, we would have done some of these infrastructure improvements along the way, right? If we had realized, okay, 25% is our cap and we're going way over that, we should be thinking about how we're going to spend this for the benefit of the library. So anyway, and if it's not clear, I think the 15 to 25 is great. So go for it, budget.
Anything else? Okay. Next, reopening plan update is a discussion item. And Melanie? Or Adrian? Who is it? Melanie?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I think I said all the things I had to say about this.
Okay.
But I think we're looking for approval of this middle phase plan. And then also just a general agreement with the idea that we'll reevaluate following the renovation. So I think that's what we're looking for. Yes, Adrian.
Yeah, would you like me to share the draft? Okay, one moment, please.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Carla.
So would the signing up for the like the appointments, would that be through the is it My Libro? Is that what it is? just like how you sign up for picking up your books right now?
Yes.
Okay, and then you'll just have a set number of spots that people can sign up for each day?
Yes, that's something that we still are not sure what would be good. And like what times would be good. Oops, sorry, didn't share it. So let me just get this on here. I just drafted this real quick. So the column that you're looking at is column E, the draft of the new phase. So what we need to determine are how we're going to transition to the next level, what would need to happen for us to go back to just contactless pickup. Do we want the computers open and allowing for printing? How are we going to handle it if patrons are not wanting to wear face masks or do social distancing? Also, right now, the capacity limits are 30%, including staff, but Emily had a hard time getting an actual capacity of the building.
You mean from the fire?
Yeah.
Like the fire chief? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
he was asked and it was, people were unsure or we weren't able to get in touch?
People were unsure.
What happened to those signs where it just says the number? Does it, I thought those had to be posted in public places. Or am I just thinking of schools? Is it just schools that have to do that? Do you just live in schools too much? You know what I'm talking about?
Not sure.
And they write it with like a black marker.
Yep.
You know,
I can see it
not
like
posted
restaurants
anywhere.
too.
Yeah,
Restaurants.
restaurants
I
have
think
those
it's
too.
restaurants, not schools.
Didn't make that up.
I feel like it's not just schools. I thought it was other public buildings.
Yeah, they have this for everything, this like little plan.
So that would be a very important thing to know if we're talking about a percentage of capacity.
Mm-hmm. And that would help us determine, but we could also go really conservative. The staff are concerned about having people back in the building without being vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know that we can move forward on approving anything until I'm able to talk with HR and the union person. I have a meeting with them on Friday to see what they have to say.
So this is a discussion item tonight, not an action item. And I mean, a board member could make a motion, I suppose, but it's intended to be a discussion item tonight. Okay. So I saw a hand. Mark.
Just that I was, yeah, I think that was that in your report, Adrian, that there was some reticence on the part of staff? Yeah.
Yes.
You know, the city's open by appointment, and I'm going to assume that not everybody at City Hall is vaccinated. You know, I think if the numbers continue to trend down, we're going to be hard pressed not to open up more. And this seems like a good and reasonable step to me. You know, I guess it's for you to discuss with HR how they're going to accommodate people's concerns. But I don't think those concerns should hold up opening the library up more if the numbers continue to trend down.
Thank you.
Other discussion. Maybe a little bit of history. Last March, I forget the exact date.
The 13th.
March 13th. Oh, right. The 13th, like when school shut down, other things, we held an emergency meeting of the board and we closed it down. And so the library building has been closed to the public since March 13th. Well, March 14th. We closed early that day, actually.
Yep.
We were like, nope, shut it down. The virus is here. And we were pretty early to move on that in comparison to other libraries. We were one of the first to fully shut down that way. And the entire year, I mean, this plan was put in place by Emily and the staff of the library in conjunction with them and with policy review. And we've been planning for reopening, the whole pandemic. And it's already been adjusted one time because, as when you live through your first pandemic, you have to learn things along the way, and we've adjusted things. For instance, this used to be tied to the other phase thing that we had, that the governor had, that they got rid of, that they don't do anymore. And so we had to adjust for that. And of course, this interim opening 3.5 is another way we're just thinking about it. I think we're also learning from other libraries that have, gradually reopened. So I'd be curious to hear too, Adrian, what you've learned about what's going well and what's been challenging about those reopenings.
Anecdotally, patrons have been having difficulties with the idea of wearing masks. One library has limited its computers to only residents, and because we share a lot of the same patrons and they're used to just going back and forth, that caused a lot of consternation. So that is a concern for a lot of staff who work at different libraries, and some might be open that the patrons will not be respectful. That being said, I feel like Royal Oak patrons have been really supportive and overall really respectful of this. So as long as we have a good plan in place and maybe even talk to the interim city attorney to see, what we can do for people if they refuse to follow the masking guidelines. But the city hall is open for appointments, but they also have a different setup. Patron or people there helped at a desk, whereas in the library, it's a lot more free flowing, and people are used to getting really close to get service, or especially if they need computer assistance. So,
Carlo.
I agree with what Mark said about that. This seems like a very reasonable step, and with the way that numbers are trending, it's hard to imagine not working towards opening up more than we are. A couple things. So with the schools opening right now, working towards a hybrid option, one of the things that the principals are doing is they're taking videos that are introducing the kids to the new protocols, so they know what to expect when they return to the school buildings, and things are going to be a little different. And I feel like with the COVID protocol, and then two, with the new checkout systems, with the RFID tagging, those things would be really nice to have in place and shared widely on social media. And just highlighting a few things that, hey, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. Have you thought through, are people going to be allowed to bring their kids to be able to look through the aisles to pick out the books for their kids? Or are we going to say, no, only one person per group? I think those things need to be clarified about what is allowed or what isn't, because it's going to come up.
That's one thing I have potentially down here is for family groups, because a lot of our patrons who've been asking when we're reopened is because their kids love the library and they want to come in the library. And I don't want to say, yes, you can come, but your kids can't come, or you can pick one kid out of 3 to come. I feel like we should let entire families come in to browse the stacks if that's what they want to do. So if we keep it a lower appointment amount, but we say, you can bring your whole family, that might go over more.
Well, I think also if toys are removed, then it's well, right now it's just about looking at the books and picking out books. And when things, when we progress into a further stage where you're really allowed to hang out, then the toys can come back out.
And we have library of things that they can check out and take home, so they still get library toys.
Karen.
I was just hoping for a clarification. I was a little confused between what it means to go for an appointment and what it means to go for grab and go, because grab and go almost sounds like curbside pickup, only I can go in the lobby and pick up my books. Whereas an appointment seems like I can look around and look through the books, which didn't make sense to me because that phase would come before the grab and go.
So grab and go is where people can come in and browse without an appointment, but just stay for an hour.
Okay, thank you.
It's like timed admission. Mark.
On the mask issue. So think about it. In Royal Oak, you go to the grocery store. The grocery stores have a policy that you have to wear a mask. And whenever I go to the grocery store, everybody has a mask on. Now, that's not to say that there won't be people testing it at the library and try to come in without a mask. And so we politely ask them to leave, right? And try and escort them to the door. But if they're non-compliant, then we need some support. And I'm not certain that the police department is going to want to come over and do that. It might be helpful to have a conversation with the police chief about that. In the event someone is non-compliant and refuses to leave, then something has to give, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark. It seems like the two places that we need clarification from and some brainstorming about maybe is the city attorney and the police chief, because I also am not interested in our staff having a verbal confrontation with an unmasked patron. No, no, thank you. So, yeah, I think these things we should plan for as best we can and think about what the supports would be. There probably also needs to be updates to the policies around the what's it called? I use all my words today, you guys. Where, you know, like the behavior policies. There's a name.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct, right? I mean, I think it's a new era. I don't know if I don't know what other libraries just adding those in, or they. I mean, we have rules about food and beverage. You know, I guess we're going to need some rules about masking in the policies that are connected to what happens. You know, do they lose their privileges to come back physically into the library? Can they still check out materials and do pickup? But not, you know, you're going to have to figure that out.
One thing that Emily mentioned when we were initially going with this phase, talking about the grab and go, is that if people were not able or not willing to wear a mask, that we would tell them we could definitely get them books, but they just need to wait outside.
Some schools that are being serious about the masking, if children are refusing or not, if they have to a certain amount of times, they have to become remote learners. So it's not about cutting them off from service, but exactly what you're saying is you're going to have to access it differently for safety. I think it's very reasonable. Carla and then Erin.
So I was pretty much just going to say what you said, Stacy, is that we need to think through what the policy will be on the library standpoint. If someone's refusing to wear a mask, you know, what is the, you know, what forms are filled out and what are the repercussions from the library standpoint? You know, how long is there, you know, how far does it escalate? But I do think that this first stage will probably have fewer issues since it's appointment only. Like, people are going to be greeting them at the door, right, for their appointment. So if they're not wearing their mask, they are not going to be welcomed into the building. It will be later stages where people are not let in one at a time when there will be more issues with that, I think.
Erin.
Do we need to provide masks for patrons? I know, don't we have hand washing stations now? Are we prepared to provide masks?
We do have a bunch of disposable masks. We have the hand washing station and we also have hand sanitizer stations.
Okay.
I was just thinking that same.
And then Melanie, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that while I agree with you, Carla, as far as when I think we'll see trouble, I do think that we don't want our staff having to be security guards too. And so now would be the time to figure out what the supports will be. You know, this is the place in the phases where we need to know what staff can do if there's trouble.
Melanie.
I mean, the good news is that the police are right there. I mean, they're not far. So I was just going to comment on what Erin said about providing masks. I was just thinking that same thing, and I made a note for myself that we need to look at masking in terms of our code of conduct, and bring that forth too. Because the other thing is that the people who I see who are non-compliant with masks these days are people who wear like wildly inadequate masks, right? Like put like a tissue paper over their nose and then decide and call that a mask. And we don't want to be policing that either, but I think it would be nice if there was some supply of masks that we could say that we could have on hand if we saw someone come in with an inadequate mask. Anyway, more for the policies for you to think about.
Erin.
In the past, would monitors usually handle any issues that would come up? And if so, by now, are there any webinars or some kind of training? Because you see this in all the stores that you're going in. People that wouldn't have had a quote security job in the past kind of have one now. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of training that we could offer for the staff.
There is. The person who did the homelessness and libraries training also did a COVID training. It's not free, but we could purchase that out of the professional development budget.
That was going to be my next question. For folks new to the board, when we're open to the public, the library also serves our people who are facing homelessness. They spend a lot of time at the library, and there are often some mental health challenges. And you know, it can be very tricky. So that would be another whole angle to consider in this about approaches. And I mean, having masks there would be really helpful in terms of if people don't have access to masks. That would be helpful, but that may not be the reason someone's not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And it can escalate quickly. So something to think about as well. We've talked about for a long time, like, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a social worker on staff? We've talked about that. We've dreamed a little bit about that. Yeah.
Sounds like a COVID need. Do we know anyone in the county who can help us fund such a initiative?
Not even a person. Okay. What else what else are we thinking about in terms of the phase in? I'm wondering, sorry, I said that and then I was like, oh, I have something to say. I'm wondering to what degree we might get staff involved in this particular policy review. I don't know if it could be like Adrian, maybe they don't have to come to the committee, but maybe Adrian, could you meet with them and get their input and their thinking about things that should go into a policy? I know you really have a grasp on what's happening, but I think it's important that staff have input into these policies, and they might be thinking about things that not everyone's thinking about. So I think that's important. And then the policy review committee can consider it. That's happened plenty of times too before, where, you know, the reason for policy comes from staff themselves and they draft something and it gets sent to the committee. So there's precedent for that. But I think it's important for something like this.
Yeah, we've talked about it at the department head meeting and the all staff meeting, but I bet some staff would like to be on a targeted committee for it. Since when we first did this, it was just department heads, but now we're down one department head. So
we're down one department head because our department head is doing 2 jobs. Okay. What else do we have? Erin.
Adrian, in your director's report, you had talked about the staff that that might not feel comfortable, or the staff that are at high risk and they might be able to work from home. Will there be any staffing issues? Do you have enough staff that are concerned that would not want to work in the building?
I think so. And that's partly why I wanted to talk to HR2 to see if they would need to go on like a temporary unemployment, and then we could pull in the library subs without much of a budget impact. But we only have one monitor on staff at a time. And right now the monitor has been doing the runner for curbside. So it would definitely take some staff reshuffling to staff a greeter and a runner position.
So now, Adrian, it sounds like there are 3 places that you need to follow up on. One is the city attorney, one is the police chief, and the other is HR in terms of leave options for folks and ways to be. And like so far, by the way, and definitely from the jump on this board has been very supportive of being flexible and supportive of our staff during a pandemic. So, and I don't get the sense anything has changed. So if you could please communicate that with staff, that really what we're interested in is working with them and keeping everyone safe and putting policies and procedures in place that protect them and protect the community. We're also not interested in any sort of community spread, right? We're not through it all the way yet. So I think the board's been pretty clear about that. So what other thoughts are we having about this phased in reopening? I'm wondering about, so when you go to a restaurant now, you have to give your name and your phone number for contact tracing reasons.
They're all signing up through the MyLibro. So we
Okay.
have that.
Well, my question would be, but I know there's also privacy, library patron privacy laws. And I'm just wondering if there's any considerations to think about with that.
The Library of Michigan attorney has advocated for libraries not doing contact tracing.
Got it. Melanie.
Could we at least make it a like checkbox for people who come in? Like if you would like to be contact traced, if a known case comes in, please check here. And if we find out anything, we'll let you know. I mean, like I would check the box if that were an option.
I wonder if we could modify that city check-in that we have to do every day. I don't know if you have to do it as a commissioner, Melanie, if you've been in the building. But there's a QR code that we scan and you just fill in a code and your contact info. So maybe we could do something like that and make it optional.
Erin.
Do we have to check patrons' temperatures?
So I can tell you what they've said about schools. They say, don't do it. Oh, my computer wants to talk to me. That's weird. But you do bring up a question. Is there going to be some sort of clear to go sort of, do people, when they sign up for an appointment, have to check off that they don't have these symptoms before they come in? Like, so when we're sending our kids next week, if you're sending them hybrid, you got to do that every single time you send them into the building. Is that something we need to consider?
I think what they advocate for at the Library of Michigan is to just have it posted that you shouldn't enter if you're sick, but they don't advocate for checking temperatures either.
It's like Kroger. I feel like Kroger has that. They're like, if you're sick, don't come in here. We hope you don't. Okay.
Yeah, and that we would also need to talk to the city attorney about like removing people who are symptomatic, because you don't, like, that's protected information. What if it's not COVID, but they cough anyway?
I have terrible allergies. That means I can never go to the library. I'll be kicked out.
We don't want to kick you out.
They have changed how they ask those questions, at least on our sports one, where it used to be like, if you've had any of these symptoms, have you had any of these symptoms? And now they say, have you had these symptoms that are not attributed to something else like allergies?
Anything else? There are so many things to consider with this that it's mind-boggling. Okay, seeing none, we're moving it. We have no action items, further action items. We're at the last part, adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Carla seconds. No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Maya would like to stay, but the rest of the class is dismissed. Let the record reflect that this motion passed unanimously. Okay. 9:15. My gosh, you guys, though, we're tackling big things. COVID reopening, getting rid of fines, budgets, being like really amazing with our fund balance, guidelines, all kinds of things. So I appreciate you. Nice work, team. Congratulations on your very first board packet, Adrian, your very first meeting. Well done.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sharon, our new trustee. And we will see you in a month. I'll see some of you in committee meetings before then, but we'll see the rest of you in a month.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.